shitty house, spooky sounds. Ooh, is it haunted?
This house is off limits!
Welcome to the family, son. I'm coming, Mia.
Resident Evil 7 is taking the series back to its roots, and as most of you have already experienced in the demo, it's not holding back on the horror. But can the full game continue to deliver the scares? Here to discuss this and everything Resident Evil 7 is Leon Hurley.
Hello.
Hello Leon, so you've finished the game. How does it compare to what we've seen so far?
With the demos and what you've seen, that is the game. It sort of continues that sort of first-person, quite intimate sort of exploration. It just changes kind of tonally as the game progresses. You got the members of the family; they all have like their own little bits of the game, if you like, and there's a section when you sort of move on from the house. So what we've seen is basically how the game works. It just tonally it changes, mechanically it introduces a few things here and there. But yeah, it's consistent with what we've seen.
Okay, and I guess most importantly is, does it feel like a Resident Evil game?
Yeah, it's really weird because it is it's essentially like an absolute reboot. Like Resident Evil 4 was a big change, but essentially it was still third person. It was still dealing with crowds of monsters. This could be a good game on its own without the Resident Evil name. But when you are playing it, you find little notes. You find like in the baker's house somewhere there's a picture of the Arkley Mountains, which is obviously where the first game took place. So there's throwbacks to the original game, but mechanically it also has a similar feel. So you have the crates in the safe rooms. You go into the safe rooms, you have a tape recorder now instead of a typewriter. And you have the little warbly music that lets you know you're safe. You have these crates. You're having to sort of manage your inventory, try and work out like, I don't need this key right now, but I need some bullets. So you swap stuff in and out. Just exploring the house and the way you get different keys that open different doors. You sort of find all these notes that explain the backstory. Even though it's first person and it plays nothing like any Resident Evil game that's gone before, you still get that resi feel because you just recognise things and notice little touches.
So what's it actually like to play? Is it a scary game? Is there a lot of action in it?
It's a very scary game. It's a very intimate game. I said that before. Like when you have that dinner scene, I think you've seen that you're sitting around a table with the Bakers and you've got like Jack, Marguerite, Lucas, and Grandma. That is basically the most amount of people you see on screen at once. As a rule, it's you and maybe one of the family, or they have these creatures called molded, who are these sort of big slimy monster things. So you might encounter a few of those, but as a rule, you never sort of have more than one other person to deal with. So it's very intimate. It knows that leaving you alone is sometimes a lot scarier than having anything jump out at you. So there's quite, not extended sections, but there's bits where you are just creeping around, trying to solve a puzzle, trying to get a key, trying to do a thing, and it's just you on your own. There's a bit of creaking. The sound design is really good. There'll just be footsteps and breathing. There's not a lot of music apart from when stuff happens, and you don't sort of almost notice the music when stuff happens because you're too busy trying to deal with what's happened. But sound design's really good, and yeah, you just explore, sort of getting a bit more wound up, getting a bit more scary. Something hasn't happened for a while. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And it's quite good as well at kind of putting scares in, just not quite where you're expecting them. So, you might be heading towards a door going, well, it's going to happen there, and then something jumps out from the side. So, yeah, it's very scary. It builds a lot of tension. It's really well executed on that front.
Stay the fuck out!
And on top of that, a lot of the old Resi systems are back as well. You mentioned safe rooms, but you also get herbs, and there's a few other things as well, right?
Yeah, it's mixed. So, yeah, I mean, all the Resi guns there, you start off with a very weak handgun. There's, you find a broken handgun that you can repair if you find a repair kit. Herbs, you can, just like before, you can combine them. It's got the combining thing. So you find this chem fluid. It's a little bit like The Last of Us, where you'd have, say, alcohol and you'd combine it with a bandage to make a first aid kit or a rag to make a Molotov. You have like offensive uses. So this chem fluid, if you combine it with herbs, you get like a medical kit. If you combine it with gunpowder, you get bullets. If you have super chem fluid, which if you combine with gunpowder, you get like explosive bullets. So you're always having to like look at your inventory and go, well, I'm low on ammo, so I might need to risk some bullets and not have some med kits, or I've got plenty of bullets, so I'm just going to make some med kits.
And you get a fancy new watch.
Yes, which, yeah, it's weird. I feel like the watch doesn't quite do anything. Like, I mean,
it shows your health, right?
Yeah, it shows your health. So you can bring it up when you look at your inventory. It brings it up and it shows like a flashing green bar. But that's kind of pretty much it. Like, there's no on-screen furniture at all. So yeah, so the only way you can check your health, I mean, you get like blood splatters around the screen, but the other way of checking your health is you look at the inventory, and on one side is your inventory, on one side your hand comes up to look at your watch, but you can tell by how much blood on the screen, you know, how bad off you are.
Okay, well, leading up to the release of Resi 7, obviously the VR side has been quite a big thing. So what's it like playing in VR compared to just playing it on your TV?
Oh, it's horrible. It's so horrible, like in a good way. We're not allowed to capture the first hour because there's a lot of sort of spoilers in there, and it's really good if you don't see it. If you don't see anything, you go in unprepared. So I played the first hour in VR, and it's hideous. I have to say that I don't get motion sickness, so I played it with all the kind of the stabilizers off. So full FPS motion, no tunnel vision, no kind of segmented turning. The default is that it turns in segments, and if you turn that off, it kind of does a tunnel vision thing to minimize motion sickness. So I played it in full first person, full speed. So I don't know how well everyone will manage to do that. Some people I think will get quite sick from it, but it is horrible. Like the scares are awful. Like you've got the visor on your face, you're there, you can't sort of look away. There was one sequence, like for an extended sort of 10-15 seconds, where I was just almost lying backwards on the sofa, trying not to look at this thing that was happening, but still trying to play the game. And I just ended up like curled fetal on my side on the sofa, like still trying to play the game, but still trying to fight this thing, just making like horrible noises. It's awful in VR. Later on, when I was playing it in normal vision on the TV, there were moments where I was thinking like I couldn't do this in VR. Like I wouldn't be able to get through this because it's scary enough just on the TV. The idea of having to be in that world would be just unbearable.
But crucially, it works. There are no problems with it.
Oh, no, it's great. Yeah, it's really good. Like I say, it just depends on your tolerance to motion sickness. Like, I don't know how well some of the boss fights will fare if you have the segmented turning, where you only turn like 10 degrees, 20 degrees at a time. They might be a bit more sort of fiddly. But if you can go like full fat FPS controls, then it's fantastic. It works really well.
So that's a quick thing to mention before we get to the score. There are boss fights in this. How do they work?
The boss fights here are interesting because obviously it's first person. That obviously makes boss fights immediately difficult. They have some really good ideas and they're really well done, but there is an element of luck as to whether you find it sort of easy or frustrating or obvious. There's some mechanics in one where if you do it a certain way, the boss fight's over in a couple of minutes and you go, that was amazing. But if you don't sort of find some of the options that are there, you could be stuck for a long time going, I don't know what I'm meant to be doing. But for the most part, they work, and even if they can be a bit frustrating to get through, when you get to the end, you're like, well, that was cool. That was really good.
Okay then, well, let's sum everything up and put a score on it. What are we giving Resident Evil 7?
4.5 out of 5. It's consistently really good all the way through. There's a little bit of a lull towards the end for reasons I can't discuss because it will spoil things, but it's really good. It's a really solid horror game, even without the Resident Evil name.
Come on now. Don't be like that. It's gonna be fun. Just you wait.
Well, that's our review of Resident Evil 7. For more content from GamesRadar, click on the boxes to the left, and don't forget to click the big box in the middle to subscribe for more gaming news, reviews, previews, and features right here on GamesRadar Plus.
Who are you people?